When I tell people that my PhD looks at Ann Radcliffe, their response is almost always, who?
So Ann Radcliffe was an extremely successful writer. On more than one occasion, she was compared to Shakespeare very favourably. There are a couple of reviews, contemporary reviews of her work, that sort of hint at the idea that she might be better than Shakespeare at creating the sense of terror or suspense.
Radcliffe published 5 novels in her lifetime, some of which were published anonymously. It was the success of The Mysteries of Udolpho that drew attention to Radcliffe in the 1790s and beyond, as her publishers bought Udolpho for £500, at a time where authors were generally selling their manuscripts for an average of £10.
So Ann Radcliffe was born in 1764. The novels that we now most associate with her were produced in 1794 and 1797. First one, The Mysteries of Udolpho, and then in 1797, The Italian.
As students at the University of Sheffield, we have studied The Italian. And I think The Italian is a really interesting book because of the way Ann Radcliffe presents females and like female villains, particularly in terms of, you know, she's a female writer who is writing about evil women, which is not conventional of the time.
So Radcliffe gives us a series of heroines who fight for their rights, who fight to own their own property, and who may marry conventionally at the end of the romances, but who are able to hold on to their own property and fortune. And I think that that's what makes her exciting.
Seeing as the way that we encountered The Italian was part of a module that took a pretty chronological approach, and it was just really interesting to see this like explained supernatural that she does, which is where she basically makes you think there might be a ghost around the corner, or that this sound is perhaps a supernatural occurrence. In the first Gothic novel, The Castle of Otranto, that is just filled with all of these kind of like Scooby-Doo like occurrences.
In the 1790s, there were lots of texts published which we would consider Gothic today. A lot of these texts were trashed by the contemporary press. A lot of them were sort of cheap imitations of better Gothic texts like Radcliffe's, but Radcliffe was pretty much consistently singled out as above the rest.
So in Sheffield and in the city archives, there's a really interesting diary written by a young man called Joseph Hunter. And round about the age of 14, he describes in one of his entries going to Surrey Street Library, and he wanted to borrow the second volume of her novel, The Italian, and he's unable to because somebody has taken it out on that day. So Joseph Hunter eventually gets hold of it, and he writes in his diary, "Read the second volume of The Italian today. Radcliffe is the best writer in her way of anyone that I know."
Outside of the field of Gothic literature and 18th, 19th century literature, Romantic literature, she doesn't have the same status and reputation as other writers who are household names that most people will have heard of, like Dickens or the Bronte sisters, and it's exciting to be part of something that's hopefully going to boost her reputation.
With everything that she had achieved at the time of her writing and the legacy that she's left today, Radcliffe truly is the mistress of the Gothic.
She was very eminent as like a writer, but seems to have been excluded from the literary canon and sort of like is not academically engaged with on an undergraduate level. And I think we both really think that is a crying shame.